Hey guys, what's up? The elusive Pixie Chi here, and before I start this week's reading of TINALBION's FABLE fanfiction, Love the Way You Lie, I'd like to say that this is an experiment. I am reading this story with my own voice. She'll still be her marvelous hero, OC Sophitia, but she wanted me to try and read it. So we're going to just see what she likes best. And also, my natural reader was not reading some of Hammer's lines correctly. So, yeah, that's kind of important. Okay, without further ado, here's Chapter 6 of Love the Way You Lie. Reaver's point of view. That woman invaded my thoughts and dreams since she had departed, and my soul had begun to ache. Visions clouded my mind, and Victor had awoken from a long slumber at last. He began to slowly claw at the surface from the depths within. For that hero. My fist slammed onto the table as my thoughts drifted further and further. The anger had built up within hours, and I couldn't contain it much longer, because I was about to explode at any moment.
Damn you. Get out of my head.
Several knocks to my door sounded through the room, but I was in no mood to speak to anyone. Master Reaver? Is everything all right? Terry called through the door.
Yes, Terry. Go back to your duties.
Yes, sir. Did you need anything before I take my leave? Some hot tea, maybe?
No, thank you, Terry.
A tear had escaped and slowly rolled down my bruised cheek. I heard footsteps part ways after a few lingering moments had passed, but my pain hadn't subsided for quite a while, so that's where several bottles of wine proved useful. Sophie's point of view. I placed the journal in the top drawer of my bedside table, and I tried to forget about the pages within. I knew how devastating a loss like that could be to a person, because I shared a very similar pain many years ago. But my emotions of it were now bittersweet. A knock on the door startled me out of my daydreaming, and I ran to answer it immediately.
I'm coming!
I yelled to my unknown guest, and hoped it wouldn't be another one of Reaver's acquaintances. I opened the door slowly, in hopes of it being a familiar, friendly face. "Well, there you are," shouted Hammer. "I had a hell of a time finding you, you know. You could have told me your house was burned down. I thought you were dead, until a villager told me otherwise." She scolded me for several minutes, until I was finally able to get a word in.
I'm sorry, Hammer. A lot has happened since then, and I wasn't present in my home. I just arrived back in Bowerstone, so cut me a little slack.
I smiled. "I'll forgive you this one time, but I want to know all about your visit with old Reeves, eh?" She chuckled at the silly nickname.
It will never happen, Hammer. He's just too...
"Reaver," she finished.
Yeah.
I sighed heavily and looked down at my feet. Then I was suddenly overcome with a wave of sadness as I thought of the man I longed to be with. "Want me to kick his arse for you?" she asked with a nasty smirk. I slowly began to laugh myself until I had an outburst, and tears almost began to flow.
Hi, Hammer, I'm sorry to say, but I beat you to it.
Her eyes grew wide with surprise, and she had stayed silent for a moment. "No way!" I laughed at her reaction, and I sat down on my large chair in the dining room.
Yeah, I punched him,
I confessed. I gestured her to have a seat next to me, which she gladly accepted. I told her about my little run-in with Reaver's thugs, and the events that led me to Bowerstone Market Living.
And so I punched him in the face.
"Well, this is the happiest day of my life!" she exclaimed happily.
Felt really great to let that smug bastard have it. He's deserved it for years. But still,
Hammer's humorous face disappeared. But you still love him. I know. She had been understanding about my feelings for him, yet she still didn't quite get it. She was always at a loss on the subject.
Yeah, I guess I'm that predictable, eh?
I said with a large smile. Ah, Sophie, still young at heart. But it's getting late, Soph. Maybe I should get back to my room in Oakfield. I've been staying there while I visit, she explained.
Alright, be safe, friend.
We exchanged our goodbyes and made plans to see each other within the next few days.
Such a friend.
I cooed. Reaver sat at his desk within his bedroom as he gingerly sipped at his goblet of wine.
Nothing like chilled Merlot in the morning,
He thought.
but I'm still not feeling right. Esmeralda was more than a gracious guest last night.
He sighed heavily at the woman who now occupied his bed, and he looked at the tart with disgust.
Why am I not satisfied?
The woman stirred under the sheets and stretched her body. Good morning, love, she said quietly to him. You're up rather early. She sat up and wrapped her arms around the man and began to kiss the side of his neck.
Yes.
Was all he said to her. He tried to shake the woman off, but she was rather insistent. She leaned in close to his ear and spoke softly. I can make you feel better, love, she seductively whispered. Reaver suddenly pushed her away with force, and he wore a look of annoyance.
You tried to make me feel better last night, and you obviously failed at your job. So what makes you think your tricks will satisfy my needs now?
She looked at him, appalled by his outburst, and backed away slowly. Reaver! Tears instantly welled in her eyes.
Get out,
He said in a deep, guttural voice. You're a monster, you son of a hob! She burst into a flood of tears and grabbed her remaining clothing from the floor, then sprinted out and slammed the door behind her. The slam had shook the entire room, but Reaver just sighed and took another drink.
Good riddance,
He growled.
Terry. I'd like another bottle.
He called loudly, and he hoped she had heard his urgent request. Sophie's point of view. Farron and I awoke early in the morning to do some shopping for the new place, and everyone who ran their stalls greeted me with kind words. As usual, I gave autographs to the local children and chatted with the adults, who were mainly interested in discussing the large size of my purse. I noticed a familiar young man walk by as I looked for some fruits, and it was the man who had asked to court me in Rookridge. He had eventually found someone, and she walked along his side proudly, hand in hand, and she was beautiful.
Good for him.
I thought. Then I let out a sigh and shook my head. I sadly let the hurtful memories of the other day seep into my mind. Miss Sophie! A woman's voice called to me, so I looked around and tried to search for the location. My eyes wandered towards the food stalls near the bridge.
Terry!
I smiled and walked over to her.
What are you doing here?
Master Reaver needed a few items, so I decided to come here. All of Bloodstone's stalls need new foods, she said with a smile.
Ah, yes. How is Reaver and his space?
I asked shyly. He's still a bit upset, but he's gotten over it fairly quickly. But... She stopped mid-sentence and looked away.
I don't regret it at all. Reaver has to realize that he deserved it in the long run. So what were you going to say?
You should come back to the mansion, Miss Sophie.
Why? What happened?
It's nothing terrible, she assured me. It's just that he hasn't been himself since you left. And he's mainly locked up in his chambers. Please, Miss Sophie, come back with me? She clasped her hands together and begged.
All right, I'll go.
I shot her a smile. Oh, thank you, she yelled. She suddenly leapt into my arms and embraced me tightly, which sent her shopping basket flying to the ground. I'll be forever in your debt.
No, don't be silly,
I told her.
Let me just finish shopping and take it back to my place.
Of course, she said. We had chatted as we took our time to shop, and I learned a bit about Terry that day. She told me about her childhood and her travels around Albion. She was very well educated and had many opportunities for great jobs. But she was bound to sticking with Reaver.
Why stay there if you could do so many great things?
I asked. Because he is the most hated man in Albion. So he needs someone around to be there for him. You know? I thought about her words, and I thought how saint-like she was to put up with that man on a daily basis. But she was an even better person to sacrifice her life for someone like him.
But why? What made you decide to do that?
I couldn't stop wondering why she had done something so drastic. I did it out of love, Sophie. I wasn't in love with him, but I felt he needed to be shown compassion to understand that it still exists in his life. He's always so miserable.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. Well, I'm heading to drop this off, and I'll grab my effects before we head out, alright?
Not a problem, Sophie, she answered happily. I really thought about Terry's words and her outlook on Reaver, and it hadn't left my mind since. So I decided the man who suffered all those years should have a slight break, if he deemed me worthy enough.